was is gewein, is mehr nicht du. What was, is no longer here. And that expression means everything will turn out okay. I don't regret 1 second of my life because I learned a lesson from everything. Everything. My name is Shirley Perlmuter Braff. I was born December 26, 1920 in Mount Sinai Hospital in Cleveland, Ohio. I grew up in back of Nela Park. I was 15 when we moved from there and went to Caledonia Elementary School, where I was the only Jewish child in the whole school. And they made me uncomfortable for a while, but I was the favorite of a couple of teachers, and when the teachers had a meeting of sorts, and I was in the 6th grade, I would take care of the class because I was a very good reader and I was very good in arithmetic. So then when I left Caledonia, I went to W.H. Kirk Junior High, where again I was in the minority. And along about that time, my mother, when I was 12 years old, taught me how to drive. My mother always drove a car, a big car. She taught me how to drive because she wanted me to be with boys and girls of my ilk ilk. So I would drive. In those days, you didn't need a driver's license. You said you were 16, so I looked like 16, and I drove. And I was happy. I was always a happy kid. My mother was 18 when she got married. My father was 20. My father was working in Ashtabula, Ohio, and he had some kind of a fight with his printer boss. So he decided that he was going to go into business for himself, printing business cards and things of that nature. And my mother was going to help him.
Okay.
So they moved to Cleveland, and my father bought a printing press. My mother worked the press with her foot. It was like a sewing machine pedal. And she pedaled this printing press for each individual business card that he was going to print. And he made his business pretty successful. And then he began to print lots of other things, which he built into a tremendous business years later. My grandmother, when she came to this country, was a professional cook and baker. For when she lived in Hungary, her parents sent her to cooking and baking school in Vienna. And that's where she learned all her prowess as a wonderful cateress and cook, which is how she made her living when she came to this country. And I used to help her in the kitchen. Well, she stuffed me plenty. She wanted a fat baby, and she got it. And so I watched her cook and helped her bake, and that's how I learned my prowess as a cook. And my mother also learned from her. So we were three of us good cooks.
What was your grandmother's name?
Well, we called her Bobby. That was my father's mother. We called her Bobby, and how it evolved was that the Yiddish word for grandmother is Baba or Bobby. And so we called her Bobby. When I was about 10 years old, I lived in the same house as we lived downstairs and she lived upstairs. She was a columnist for the Cleveland Press, a newspaper in Cleveland. She wrote about me. I was her favorite little girl. She wrote about me and went into ecstasies about my Bobby. My grandmother lived with us, and my grandmother sort of brought the children up. I was 10 years old when she died, but I was a baby when she came to live with us. And so my mother wanted to get out of the house. She wasn't appreciative of her mother-in-law. So she'd play cards all the time, afternoon and evening, but she was easygoing because my father was tough.
Tell me how you met Marvin, and then do you remember like your first date?
Oh, yeah. Marvin talked me into moving back to Cleveland and getting married. Marvin was the father of my children, of my 4 children, who left me after 29 years. But I was happy. Oh, I danced around the floor. We were in Columbus together at Ohio State University. His fraternity had a hayride, and he invited me on the hayride. And I called him, he used to trip me. After the hayride, he'd come and visit me at the dormitory, and he'd stick his foot out and trip me so he could catch me. And one time I called him a very bad name. And in our house, Marvin, you could never even say shut up. But I called him this very bad name, and he wouldn't speak to me for weeks, but he came around.
Who was your first boyfriend?
I was a teenager, about 14, and his name was Lou Chernikoff, and we used to go to the movies in downtown Cleveland on a streetcar, a trolley you called it. We called it a streetcar, and we'd go back and forth on the streetcar. Oh, was I in love. But, you get over it.
What was it like growing up during the Depression?
I never felt it, except for the fact that one time I saw my father, who was a stoic, sit down on the steps going upstairs, and he was crying. And that broke my heart. So that's one thing about the Depression I'll never forget. But he made it very comfortable for us. He always made a living.
Who influenced you the most growing up?
I suppose my father, because he taught me never be late for any appointment. You have an appointment at 2 o'clock, you get there 2 minutes before. You befriend those people who befriend you. And those were 2 mantras, sort of, 2 rules that I lived by.
How important important was Judaism growing up in your home?
Not at all. Not at all. Um, that's an interesting story because my father didn't want to know about religion, although he was very philanthropic as far as the synagogue was concerned. He would go to the synagogue to please my mother on the high holy days and quickly scoot out of the synagogue and drive over to the golf course, which of course was taboo on the high holy days. But where I learned tradition and to be a little on the Jewish side was in Spartanburg, South Carolina, when Marvin was in the Army. And I had Gary at the time. I moved to Spartanburg to be with Marvin. And there was a USO sponsored by a Jewish organization. And a lot of the girls would congregate at this Jewish USO. And they were all from Brooklyn. And they all spoke Yiddish, just to be able to speak it, I suppose. And I said, oh boy, I better learn this language, otherwise I'm out of it. And so I learned quickly. And that's how I became a traditional Jew, where on Friday night, to this day, I light candles. I say a prayer for my whole family, who is my whole life. And I say a prayer for those who have gone before me. And that's my only tradition at this point. Was is gewein, is mehr nicht du.
If you have any words of wisdom to pass on to your grandchildren, what would you tell them?
I would say, don't let incidentals get you down. Realize what's important in life and just wake up happy every day. That's all I would tell them.
You did a great job.
Oh, yes.
You did.